We don't need incompetent people like you. Get out!
Those were the words Cameron Voss, the newly appointed Chief Operating Officer of Stratwell Dynamics, hurled across the boardroom, his voice sharp, performative, designed to impress the junior execs flanking him. That sentence echoed through the 34th floor of Drayton Plaza, just as rain slammed against the window panes behind us. My name is Ryan Callan, 46, and I'd just been publicly dismissed by a man who didn't bother to ask who built the system he was now dismantling. He didn't check who kept this company alive during the acquisition. But here's what made me laugh genuinely, uncontrollably, even as he barked at me to leave. I own 57% of the company, and tomorrow, Cameron will need my signature to stay employed. Cameron Voss walked into Stratwell Dynamics like a man arriving to collect a crown he hadn't earned. 42 years old, Stanford MBA, polished loafers, PowerPoint charisma, and a LinkedIn feed full of recycled motivational quotes. Within a week, he called himself the catalyst for a leaner era, whatever that meant, and reorganized everything from procurement to people's parking spots. He didn't observe, he imposed. He didn't ask, he announced. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I'd seen fresh blood come in before, some with vision, some with ego, but it became clear quickly, Cameron wasn't here to lead. He was here to dominate. The first thing he set out to do was cut staff, budgets, and trust. Departments that had weathered 2 economic downturns were suddenly bloated. Team leads under 15 years were told they lacked agility. He strutted through the halls of Drayton Plaza like a man measuring square footage for his legacy, not realizing that legacy had already been written and not by him. He never once asked what I did, which is wild considering I built the core system that processes 82% of our operating revenue. It happened on a Thursday morning. The kind where the coffee doesn't quite hit and the rain makes the skyline look like it's trying to disappear. I was at my desk, reviewing system architecture for the new logistics client, the same one that would bring in $11.2 million in Q4, when Cameron's assistant appeared stiff as a mannequin. Mr. Voss would like to see you. Conference room 3B now. No explanation. No smile. I just clipped urgency. I grabbed my laptop, straightened my collar, and walked down the marble corridor of the 34th floor. Everything felt too still, like the silence before a controlled demolition. When I entered the room, Cameron was already seated at the head of the table, arms crossed, blinds drawn. Lights are too bright, too clinical. Ryan, he said, not looking up from the folder before him. Let's make this quick. I sat calmly but was already reading the script. He finally met my eyes. I've reviewed your department's performance. Frankly, I'm underwhelmed. The systems you've built are outdated. Your team lacks innovation. We need forward momentum, not legacy code and static thinking. I blinked once. Outdated according to what? Industry standards, he shrugged. Instinct, metrics, doesn't matter. Then he leaned forward. You've plateaued. You're replaceable. We don't need incompetent people like you. Get out. That's when I laughed. Not politely, not bitterly, just an honest, sharp laugh because the absurdity deserved it. He frowned. You find this amusing? I do, I said, smiling. Because you're serious. He leaned back, clearly irritated. If you're taking this as a joke, maybe we should formalize your departure. HR can begin the exit process today. I met his gaze and leaned in. Then fire me. He paused. Excuse me? If I'm so useless, let's not waste each other's time. Fire me. Right here. Right now. The silence that followed was surgical. Cameron didn't expect resistance. He expected submission, compliance, fear. But I gave him none of it because I knew something he didn't. He thought he was cutting off a weak link. He didn't realize he was trying to fire the man who controlled 57% of Stratwell's voting stock. I stood, nodded once, and left the room without looking back. I didn't need to slam a door to make a statement. I had something better. Leverage. And the next morning, when he walked into that boardroom, Cameron Voss would finally learn the one thing he'd never bothered to ask. Who owned the kingdom he thought he ruled? By Friday morning, the walls at Stratwell Dynamics felt different. Not louder, just sharper. More alert. The kind of stillness that tells you people are watching but not saying anything. Word had started to spread not through emails or memos, but through glances, hesitations, hallway detours. In corporate buildings like Drayton Plaza, silence moves faster than facts. People saw how I left that conference room, no slammed doors, no shouting. Just calm precision. That unnerved them more than a meltdown ever could. And it rattled Cameron Voss, too. That morning, he walked through the office like a man trying to reclaim gravity. Chest out, smile forced, nodding at everyone without actually seeing anyone. He didn't acknowledge me. Not even a glance. Because that's what men like him do when they miscalculate. They pretend it never happened. They double down, pivot, posture. But I could see the flicker behind his eyes. He knew something was off. He didn't know what. That afternoon, I got a call from Marie Whitlow, Stratwell's head of legal and someone who's seen more backroom deals than most of the board. "Ryan," she said, "I've reviewed the executive restructure doc Cameron submitted. And? Your division isn't listed at all, not even as transitional." I raised an eyebrow. And here's where he screwed up. Under required approvals for structural changes, he wrote, "Pending signature from majority shareholder." I smiled. He still had no clue. "No, Marie," I said. "He doesn't know it's me." There was a pause. Then she said it. "You could shut this down right now." I looked out the window. Downtown Seattle lit up like circuitry in the mist. "I don't want to stop him," I said. "I want him to walk right into it." Monday morning hit like glass clear, cold, and sharp. Seattle's skyline reflected off the rain-soaked windows of Drayton Plaza, and I dressed with intention. Not flashy, just clean. Navy blazer, crisp white shirt, no tie. The look you wear when you want to be underestimated one final time. The boardroom was already filling by the time I stepped in. I took my usual seat back third, left corner, near the coffee station. Nothing about my posture said majority shareholder, which was the point. Cameron Voss strutted in 10 minutes later, confident as ever. He smiled at a few board members, then sat next to Harvey Lanson, our chairman. A few throat clears, and then he launches into his pitch. "Stratwell must evolve," he said, clicking to a slide that read Vision 2025. A leaner, smarter machine. And that begins with realigning our technical leadership. To that end, I propose transitioning Ryan Callan to an external advisory capacity and redistributing his team under a more agile operations structure. He didn't even glance in my direction. A few members shifted. Marie Whitlow stayed stone-faced. Harvey leaned forward. "Before we vote on this, we need shareholder approval for C-level restructuring." Cameron nodded casually. "It's listed as pending. I was under the impression it wouldn't be an issue." I cleared my throat. Calm, direct. "I'm afraid I can't approve that." Cameron blinked. "Sorry, what?" I pulled out a single folder and slid it across the polished oak table toward the chairman. Per Stratwell bylaws, any structural shift affecting division heads requires majority shareholder sign-off. That would be me. Marie leaned forward and confirmed it with a nod. Ryan owns 57% of voting shares through Callan Trust Holdings. It's been verified since the last equity round. The silence was immediate, dense. Cameron stared, lips parted, pale. I didn't know," he stammered. I tilted my head. "That's exactly the problem, Cameron. You didn't know because you never asked. You made sweeping decisions without understanding who built the foundation you're trying to bulldoze." Harvey leaned back, rubbing his temple. "Well, that certainly changes things." For a full 10 seconds, no one spoke. You could hear the faint hum of the HVAC system and the soft click of a pen in someone's hand, but no voices. Cameron Voss, 42, self-declared architect of Stratwell's future, sat frozen, his PowerPoint still glowing behind him, now completely irrelevant. Across the table, Harvey Lanson, our 6-7-year-old chairman, adjusted his glasses and glanced over the folder I'd passed him. He wasn't the type to emote, but his eyebrows rose ever so slightly, the closest thing to surprise you'd get from a man who's seen 3 recessions and 1 hostile takeover. He closed the folder gently. "Well," Harvey said, voice low but firm, "that explains a lot." Marie Whitlow nodded, folding her hands. This entire realignment was built on incomplete governance, and the board was unaware of Ryan's controlling interest, a serious oversight. Cameron opened his mouth to respond, then shut it again. He looked around, eyes darting for an ally, a lifeline. He found none. His voice, when it finally emerged, had lost its polish. Why didn't anyone? Why wasn't I told? I didn't flinch. Because you didn't ask Cameron. You assumed. You were so busy performing leadership you forgot to practice it. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was decisive. He looked smaller now, his posture slouched, and his tone collapsed. The same man tossed me out of a conference room 4 days earlier, and now sat in one, exposed and powerless. Harvey leaned forward. "Cameron, given this context, the board will need to revisit your restructuring plan fully. Effective immediately, we are placing a hold on personnel changes until this matter is resolved with shareholder alignment." Cameron swallowed hard. "That's understood." "Good," Harvey said, then turned to me. "Ryan, I assume you'll remain involved in the current initiatives." I nodded. "Fully." As the boardroom began to clear, I gathered my folder and stood. I didn't look at Cameron. I didn't need to. But as I reached the door, I heard him quiet, almost childlike. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I paused, hand on the handle. Not enough to turn. Just enough for the words to carry. "Because the people who matter already knew," I said. "And the ones who don't, eventually show you why they don't." Then I walked out and left him sitting in the ruins of his assumptions. By Wednesday, the energy inside Stratwell Dynamics had shifted again, not openly hostile, but off like a room where someone turned down the thermostat just slightly enough for your shoulders to tense without knowing why. Cameron Voss wasn't gone. Not yet. And men like him don't retreat, they regroup. He returned to the office with that same polished stride, suit perfectly tailored, fake confidence back on like armor. But something had cracked. His eyes didn't scan the room as they used to, they searched it. He didn't challenge me directly. That would have required admitting what had happened in the boardroom. Instead, he chose a quieter route. The first hit came through data access permissions. My team suddenly lost visibility into 2 of our long-standing analytics dashboards, ones we'd built and maintained for years. When I checked with IT, they told me it had been changed via an executive directive. "Streamlining redundancy," they said. Sure. Next, a high-profile presentation with a Fortune 200 client, a meeting I had scheduled and prepped for, was quietly reassigned to one of Cameron's hand-picked managers. I learned from a cancellation notice that hit my inbox 15 minutes before the call. I followed up. His assistant responded, almost apologetically. It was rerouted to better align with the current operational leadership track. Operational leadership track. That's what they were calling sabotage now. It was clear. Cameron wasn't trying to fire me anymore. He was trying to erase me. Bit by bit. Access. Visibility. Credibility. He wanted me to look disengaged, to appear unnecessary, to slip quietly out the side door and disappear. What he didn't realize was that I'd seen this playbook before. Years ago, a woman I deeply respected in a different company had been iced out the same way: whisper campaigns, subtle exclusions, feedback loops that questioned her presence but never her performance. She left. I didn't speak up then. I still carry that regret. But I've got a voice now, and I'm not about to let history repeat. That night, I opened a private file. I documented the access changes. I logged the client reassignment and screenshotted calendar modifications. If Cameron wanted to play quiet games in the shadows, fine. I'd play in daylight. Because when someone tries to erase you quietly, the most powerful thing you can do, it documents the noise they think no one will hear. The next morning, I walked into Drayton Plaza an hour earlier than usual. The sky was still gray, typical Seattle gloom, but inside, I was clearer than I'd been in weeks. Cameron Voss thought he was bleeding me out one data cut, meeting cancellation and polite undermining at a time. But he didn't know this. I wasn't just surviving it. I was archiving it. I created a folder titled Operational Discrepancies, Voss, buried deep inside a mirrored drive time-stamped, encrypted, with a backup on a secured personal server every meeting I'd been removed from. Every report access was revoked. Every communication is rerouted. It was all there. I even began keeping voice memos after one-on-one conversations, noting tone, content, and intent. And then the messages started arriving. At first, it was a single note through our anonymous employee portal. "Thank you. You don't know me, but I watched him dismantle my team over 2 weeks." Seeing someone finally stand up was the first time I felt safe in months. No name, no department, just quiet honesty. It was the first of many. Over the next 3 days, I received 18 more. Some short, others detailed. All are describing eerily similar patterns. Reassignments without explanation. Performance reviews rewritten at the last minute. Sudden reductions in project visibility. Strategic reshuffling is justified with vague buzzwords like agility, modernization, or streamline. I read each message twice. Then I filed them, redacted names, and cross-referenced dates and internal memos. I didn't want gossip. I wanted evidence. By Friday, Cameron made his next move. A forwarded email landed in my inbox, sent by mistake from someone I suspected was quietly aligned with me. The subject line, "Concerns regarding executive participation." The body of the email made my stomach clench, but not from fear, from recognition. It was a classic projection. Ryan Callan has shown signs of disengagement over the past 2 weeks. He has missed key meetings and appears increasingly resistant to strategic directives. While I respect his tenure, I question his long-term alignment with Stratwell's future. See, Voss. He had created the absence. Then I cited it as proof. I closed my laptop and sat back. This wasn't petty. This was calculated. Cameron was setting a narrative, building a case to paint me as insubordinate, outdated, and unfit for the evolving company. But here's the thing about men like him. They think the strategy is spin. I know the strategy is structure. The next morning, I requested a closed-door meeting with Harvey Lanson and Marie Whitlow. I didn't go in angry, I went in organized. I laid out the file, in stages. Every denied access, reassigned responsibility, and contradiction in messaging. I included timelines, calendar changes, project drop-offs, and testimony excerpts from internal voices who had come forward. Marie flipped through each page slowly and methodically. Harvey didn't interrupt once. When I was done, I said, "I'm not here to burn down Cameron Voss. I'm here to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Ever again." Marie looked up, steady. "This is coordinated. And it's not just personal, it's systemic manipulation of Stratwell's resources and leadership process." Harvey folded his hands. "You've shown remarkable restraint, Ryan." I nodded. "This company gave me the platform to build something real. I'm not letting one man gaslight it into chaos." Harvey exhaled. "There's a board ethics committee meeting scheduled for Tuesday. Cameron will be asked to present his leadership strategy. You'll attend and you won't just observe this time." I left the room feeling something I hadn't in weeks: certainty. It's not about winning, but about truth. I didn't rest that weekend, but didn't pace either. I prepared. I reviewed every document and refined every point. I wasn't just defending my name. I defended clarity, accountability, and the silent contributors Cameron had tried to wipe from the blueprint. I reached out to several team leads who had once feared speaking up. I didn't push them. I asked, "If given the chance to tell the board the truth, would you?" Some said no, not out of fear, out of fatigue. But 5 said yes. One even cried on the call. Tuesday, 8:50 a.m. The executive floor of Drayton Plaza was quiet. There is no elevator chatter, no hallway laughter, just soft footsteps and silent stares. I arrived 10 minutes early, not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to be seen. The glass boardroom was already lit coffee on the credenza. Name placards polished. Harvey at the head, flanked by Marie, Stratwell's CFO, 2 outside board advisors, and a rep from legal compliance. An empty seat awaited Cameron. At 8:59 sharp, he walked in same confident gait, but less sure in the eyes. He greeted the room like a politician running low on campaign funds. When he saw me seated at the table, his mouth twitched slightly, but he said nothing. Harvey spoke first. "Mr. Voss, you've been invited to present your leadership framework and address several internal concerns raised over the last month. Following that, Mr. Callan will respond with his findings. This is a closed session and protected under board review protocol." Cameron nodded. I opened a folder and began what he thought would be his defense. But in truth, it was just the opening statement for his collapse. Cameron Voss began his presentation with the same rehearsed composure he always wore when under pressure, voice steady, posture controlled, gestures deliberate. It was the same routine I'd seen in half a dozen town halls and quarterly briefings. Perform, deflect, impress. Over the past 8 weeks, he began, Stratwell Dynamics has undergone a necessary operational pivot. As outlined during my appointment, my role has been to streamline inefficiencies, reassess legacy systems, and align our leadership model with modern execution standards. He clicked through slides, strategy maps, buzzwords, metrics that looked sleek but meant little. Then came the soft pivot. "There has been some resistance to this evolution," he said, looking down briefly at his notes, specifically from certain senior personnel. One case in particular, Ryan Callan, has presented challenges to that alignment. While I respect Mr. Callan's long history with the company, I must point out that his behavior has shifted over the last several weeks. Missed meetings, disengagement, a pattern of reluctance toward integration. He paused just enough to let the implication breathe, then continued. "I believe this is not a malice, but a clash of generational styles. I'd like to move forward without conflict, but the company must come first." He closed the folder and leaned back. Polite, calculated and poisoned with just enough plausible deniability to avoid accountability. Then Harvey turned to me. "Ryan, your response?" I didn't stand. I didn't need the theatrics. I opened a black folder, placed 3 neatly stacked files on the table, and spoke calmly. "What Mr. Voss refers to as resistance is documented strategic exclusion. In the last month alone, I've been removed from 8 meetings I was originally assigned to, including one involving a $12 million client transition I architected. I was also locked out of key data systems I built without prior notice or justification. These weren't oversights, they were instructions. I passed copies of the first file forward, access logs, meeting removals, and timestamped system rejections. Marie scanned the sheets with a sharp eye. The CFO leaned in. "This," I continued, "is not about me being outdated. It's about a slow and quiet campaign to minimize my role to the board, my team, and our partners. And I'm not the only one." I opened the second folder. These are anonymized reports submitted by Stratwell employees from 6 different departments. They all detail similar experiences under Mr. Voss's direction. Meetings pulled, responsibilities redistributed, evaluations rewritten. Harvey flipped through the pages. One report read, "I was told I'd be reassigned for better alignment," then iced out of strategy calls without explanation. My replacement was someone less experienced but closer to Voss. Another, "I was told I lacked leadership presence." No details, no feedback, just gone. The room was dead silent. Then I slid the final folder forward. This email was sent from Mr. Voss to the chairman, and 2 board members, which was accidentally forwarded to me. In it, he accuses me of disengagement and undermining executive direction. However, the meetings he claims I missed were ones I had been removed from without notification. I passed printed copies around. Cameron's signature sat at the bottom of the email. Clear, documented. He shifted in his chair. Those emails were taken out of context, he said, a voice suddenly thinner. No, Marie said firmly. We cross-verified the events. The logs confirm Ryan was removed, and IT confirmed the changes came from your executive login. Harvey folded his hands. His voice was even, but the weight behind it was impossible to miss. Cameron, we brought you here to lead, not manipulate. What you've done is not just ethically questionable, it's structurally dangerous. You've redirected core resources, tampered with leadership continuity, and constructed a false performance narrative around a shareholder. Cameron opened his mouth. This is a setup. No, I interrupted, calm as ever. You set yourself up. I didn't stop you. The silence after that was the kind that changed careers. Harvey looked at Marie. She gave a single, resolute nod. Effective immediately, Harvey said. Cameron Voss is suspended pending a formal ethics review. Security will escort you from the building after this session. A formal statement will be issued to the executive team by the end of the day. Cameron's face shifted through a kaleidoscope of disbelief, confusion, and anger. I built this transition, he said. No, I replied quietly. You almost destroyed it. The meeting adjourned. As Cameron was escorted out suit sharp, face cracked, the remaining board members turned toward me. You didn't just protect yourself, Harvey said. You protected the company. I nodded, but I didn't smile, because I knew something they didn't. This wasn't the end. It was just the part where Stratwell stopped surviving Cameron and started rebuilding everything he tried to erase. 2 weeks after Cameron Voss was escorted out of Drayton Plaza, the air inside Stratwell Dynamics felt lighter. Not in any dramatic way. There were no company-wide announcements. No celebratory memos, no awkward HR speeches about lessons learned. But you could feel it in the quiet nods exchanged across desks, the soft hum of hallway conversations, and the way meetings no longer felt like battlefields. The silence had changed. Before, it had been laced with suspicion, the hush that made you question who was next. Now, it felt open, like people could breathe again without calculating who was watching. Rumors swirled, of course. Some said Cameron tried to negotiate a golden parachute. Others whispered he'd hired attorneys to salvage his reputation. But the board stood firm. The official summary released to department heads was short and surgical. Mr. Voss's departure follows a formal ethics investigation and will not impact current operations. There was no farewell email, no LinkedIn announcement, no box of his things, just absence. And I didn't step forward right away. I didn't sit in his office, touch his desk, or ask for his title. Instead, I went back to my team, my real team, the one that had held the backbone of Stratwell for over a decade through mergers, recessions, and now one miscalculated regime. A week later, Harvey Lanson called me into his office. The blinds were half closed. His desk was cluttered not with paperwork, but with what looked like handwritten notes. He looked up, tired but composed. I assume you've heard the board's vote, he said. I hadn't, but I didn't say that. I just waited. He slid an envelope across the desk, heavy paper, gold-trimmed. Inside, appointment letter, Executive Director of Strategic Operations, effective immediately. I looked up. I didn't ask for this, I said. He smiled faintly. We know. That's why you're the right choice. I sat there for a long second, not in disbelief, in consideration. If I take this, I said finally, I want a seat at every strategy table. Not symbolic, not for optics, for impact. You have it, Harvey said. We're past the point of pretending. And I want a new leadership charter written in plain language, not corporate euphemisms. Respect, transparency, and shared accountability. Every new hire, Every promotion built on those values. Agreed, he said. And the people Cameron tried to erase? I want them elevated, I replied. No more sidelining the quiet ones, just because they don't self-promote. He leaned back, thoughtful. You're shaping the next culture, Ryan. We're just following your lead now. Over the next month, I worked more than I ever had, but it didn't feel like survival anymore. It felt like stewardship. I sat down with every department head, not in performance reviews, but in conversations. I asked what had been broken, what needed mending, what they never dared say out loud before. And I listened. We reopened project access across the board. We reinstated teams who had been gutted under streamlining. We started hosting optional end-of-week syncs, not for reporting, but for dialogue. And people started showing up again. Not just to the meetings, but to the mission. One morning, a junior analyst left a handwritten note on my desk. I'd never met him before. It read, "When you spoke up in that ethics meeting, it changed how I saw leadership. You didn't yell. You didn't posture. You told the truth." That made me believe I could too. I didn't know what to do with that, so I kept the note in my drawer. Still do. Another email came in 2 weeks later. Thanks for rebuilding this place. I'd almost forgotten what trust felt like. I never asked for praise. I didn't post on social media. I didn't update my job title online. But I did make one change. Outside Cameron's old office, I removed the nameplate. Not because I wanted mine there, but because I wanted something better. We replaced it with a plaque etched in black steel. It read, "Integrity is not optional." 3 words. Everyone understood exactly what they meant. By the end of the quarter, our client retention had stabilized. New partnerships were forming. But what I cared about most wasn't the metrics, the culture, the hallway conversations, the energy in the room. You can't KPI your way into trust. You build it in moments of clarity, especially after chaos. One Friday evening, I stayed late. The office was quiet again, but not hollow. It felt complete with possibility, with recovery, with voices returning. I looked out across Seattle, the city still humming through the glass. And I remembered my first month at Stratwell 12 years ago. I was a junior systems engineer, terrified of speaking too loudly in meetings. I watched louder people get promotions while the quiet ones worked overtime. And I promised myself, if I ever have a seat at the table, I'll keep it open for someone else. Now, I finally understood what that meant. Leadership isn't about control. It's about clarity, trust, and remembering who built the foundation before anyone tried to repaint the walls. I didn't get here by climbing over people. I got here by refusing to be erased. And that's a legacy you don't need a nameplate to prove. People think power is loud. It shows up in titles, corner offices, or how many people you manage. But I've learned that quiet things hold the most weight. Power is knowing the truth and choosing the right moment to speak it. It's refusing to let someone redefine your value because they're louder, newer, or more confident in their assumptions. I didn't win because I shouted the hardest or fought the dirtiest. I won because I documented what mattered, protected those around me, and stayed rooted in the values that built this place long before anyone tried to rewrite the blueprint. If there's one thing you should take from this, you don't have to play their game to win. You can lead with clarity. You can move in silence. And when the moment comes, you can speak with the full force of preparation, truth, and purpose. Because some people build their careers on noise, but the ones who last, the ones who shape culture, protect others, and outlive politics build on substance. So don't doubt your worth just because someone doesn't see it immediately. Let your consistency speak. Let your silence build. And when it's time, let your actions rewrite the room. That's what real power looks like. And no one can take that from you.